Ever wonder why some superhero movies soar while others plummet? It's a question many fans are asking these days. For decades, the genre seemed unstoppable, but a closer look reveals a graveyard of films that stumbled, misfired, and ultimately threatened the entire landscape. Um, it's not always about bad ideas. Sometimes even the best concepts get lost in production troubles, uh, studio interference, or simply a misreading of what. And kind of let's dive into the stories behind those cinematic casualties and explore how they just almost killed the superhero genre. Uh, in 1986, George Lucas attempted to bring an anthropomorphic duck to the big screen with Howard the Duck. Uh, the result, a tonal disaster at Wise. Blending comedy with special effects proved a recipe for bewilderment, and critics panned the animatronics and questionable humor. It discouraged studios from adapting Marvel properties for, well, nearly a decade. Christopher Reeve returned as Superman in 1987's Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. But severe budget cuts crippled the production. Recycled special effects and visible wires plagued the film, and the story felt thin. It put the Superman franchise on ice for almost 20 years. Dolph Lundgren starred as Frank Castle in 1989's The Punisher, but it bypassed a theatrical release in the United States due to financial struggles. The film felt more like a generic action movie than a faithful adaptation, um, lacking the gritty psychological depth of the comics. Matt Salinger played Steve Rogers in 1990's Captain America, a low budget attempt that rushed through the origin story, and um, it was never released theatrically in the US, serving as a cautionary tale about adapting major heroes without the necessary resources. Sylvester Stallone starred as Judge Dredd in 1995, but the film disregarded key elements of the source material. Uh, Dredd removed his helmet far too early, a cardinal sin for fans, and the tone oscillated wildly. It stalled darker comic book properties for years. Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin, 1997, is infamous for its neon aesthetic and rubber nipples on the bat suit. George Clooney's Batman and Arnold Schwarzenegger's ice puns created a campy spectacle that alienated fans, leading to a complete reboot. And Shaquille O'Neal attempted to transition into acting with 1997's Steel, but a lack of budget turned the high-tech armor suit into a rubbery costume. The film deviated significantly from the comics, um, becoming one of the lowest grossing uh, superhero films of all time. Todd McFarlane's dark anti-hero arrived in theaters with 1997's Spawn, relying heavily on early computer-generated imagery. And while the makeup effects were praised, the CGI villain looked unfinished, preventing a sequel despite the character's popularity. Preventing Ben Affleck played Daredevil in 2003, but the film struggled to balance the grim tone of the character with the studio's desire for a blockbuster. The uneven pacing and Colin Farrell's over the top performance left critics unimpressed. Um, Ang Lee directed 2003's Hulk, attempting to treat a comic book movie as a psychological drama. The slow pacing and rubbery CGI Hulk left audiences bored, making it a divisive entry that failed to launch a franchise. Sean Connery starred in 2003's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but the production was troubled, and the film ignored the nuance of the source material. It contributed to Sean Connery's retirement from acting. The Halle Berry starred in 2004's Catwoman, a standalone film that bore almost no resemblance to the DC Comics character. Um, Critics ridiculed the plot and strange editing choices, making it one of the worst films ever made. Wesley Snipes returned as Blade in 2004's Blade Trinity, but behind the scenes conflict and a muddled script plagued the production. It effectively ended the Blade franchise until Marvel Studios regained the rights. Jennifer Garner reprised her role in 2005's Elektra, a spin-off that failed to capture the magic of the first film. The film felt inconsequential and reinforced studio hesitation regarding female superheroes. Chris Evans starred in 2005's Fantastic Four, but the film was criticized for its low stakes and lack of action, while praised for his performance. The film failed to capture the magic of the comics. Brett Ratner directed 2006's X-Men: The Last Stand, attempting to adapt the Dark Phoenix saga. The film killed off major characters unceremoniously, forcing a pivot towards prequels. And Tim Allen starred in 2006's Zoom, a family-friendly comedy that failed to deliver laughs. It felt generic and lacked the passion of the source material. Nicolas Cage brought his passion to 2007's Ghost Rider, but the film suffered from tonal inconsistencies and a thin plot. It failed to launch a lasting franchise. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, 2007 attempted to do too much, introducing multiple villains and a convoluted plot. The infamous dancing scene became a subject of ridicule, leading to a complete reboot. The sequel to the original Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, 2007, improved the special effects, but failed to deliver a compelling version of Galactus. It felt out of step with the times. Frank Miller directed 2008's The Spirit, but the film was criticized for its nonsensical plot and bizarre visual style. It flopped at the box office and halted further directorial efforts. Hugh Jackman returned as Wolverine in 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine, but the film sewed the merc with a mouth's mouth shut and gave him random powers. It was a disastrous attempt to launch a spin-off. Josh Brolin starred in 2010's Jonah Hex, but the film was chopped up and incoherent. It failed to connect with audiences and discouraged further DC Vertigo adaptations. Seth Rogen co-wrote and starred in 2011's The Green Hornet. But the film failed to strike the right balance between the humor and heroism. It felt irrelevant and failed to launch a franchise. Ryan Reynolds starred in 2011's Green Lantern, but the film failed to capture the the magic of the source material. It was a critical and commercial failure, halting plans for a shared universe. Nicolas Cage returned in 2011's Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, but the darker tone couldn't mask the thin plot. The visual effects were underwhelming, and the film failed to connect with audiences. Sony's R.I.P.D. 2013 was a generic action movie with almost no connection to the source material. The visual effects were uninspired, and the film flopped at the box office. Zachary Levi starred in 2014's Shazam, but the film suffered from a tonal clash and a generic villain. And the visual effects were uninspired, and the film failed to connect with audiences. Josh Trank directed 2015's Fantastic Four, but studio interference led to a disjointed final product. The film was a critical and commercial failure, solidifying the end of Fox's attempts to make the franchise work. And Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice 2016 polarized audiences with its grin tone and complex plot. And the infamous Martha moment became a subject of ridicule. David Ayer directed 2016's Suicide Squad, but the film was plagued by reshoots and a muddled plot. It was a critical failure, but a commercial success. Joss Whedon finished 2017's Justice League after Zack Snyder stepped down, but the film was a tonal mess. It failed to live up to expectations and signaled trouble for the DC universe. Director Michael Moresi attempted to launch a new franchise with 2019's Hellboy, but the film was a critical and commercial failure. It failed to capture the magic of the original films, and Simon Kinberg directed 2019's Dark Phoenix, but the film was a critical and commercial failure. It marked the end of the X-Men franchise as we knew it. 2020's The New Mutants was delayed for years before finally being released, but it failed to connect with audiences. It was a final footnote to the Fox era. Patty Jenkins returned to direct 2020's Wonder Woman 1984, but the film lost the heart of the first film. The visual effects were underwhelming, and the plot felt rushed on saying Marvel's Eternals 2021 took a risk with a sprawling epic, but it failed to connect with audiences. The large ensemble cast felt disconnected, and the plot felt convoluted. Jared Leto starred in 2022's Morbius, but the film was a critical and commercial failure. It became famous for internet memes rather than its quality. Taika Waititi returned to direct 2022's Thor: Love and Thunder, but the film pushed the comedy to levels that many fans found exhausting. The visual effects were underwhelming. Dwayne Johnson promised a new era with 2022's Black Adam, but the film felt generic and lacked depth. It failed to break even theatrically. And 2023's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was intended to launch the next big villain, but the visual effects were underwhelming and the plot felt rushed. 2023's Shazam, Fury of the Gods failed to capture the magic of the first film. The visual effects were uninspired, and the film flopped at the box office. 2023's The Flash was plagued by controversy and failed to live up to expectations. And the visual effects were uninspired, and the film flopped at the box office. This setting marvels at the Marvels actually set a record for the lowest opening weekend in MCU history. The film failed to connect with audiences and signaled trouble for the franchise. Dakota Johnson starred in 2024's Madam Web. But the film was a critical and commercial disaster. It became an instant punchline for the state of modern superhero films. So which of these films disappointed you the most? Let us know in the comments. And with that said, thanks for watching. And until next time.